Whenever I'm sealing an area like this, I usually get comments like, "You're wasting material. Why did you put sealer there when there wasn't even primer there?" If you just prepped right, you wouldn't need to use sealer. Or my favorite one most recently was, "I've been painting 35 years, never needed a drop of sealer." That being said, it's become incredibly obvious to me that there is a serious lack of knowledge or understanding within the industry on what sealer's purpose is and why we use it and why we use it the way we use it. So today, I'm hoping to help inform or educate those people, not because I think I know everything, because I know I don't, but because clearly there's a misunderstanding. So give me a chance to clear the air. The first thing I want to cover is why we put sealer where there's no primer. Not only am I going to explain it to you guys, I'm going to demonstrate it. So I spray Envirobase by PPG. We use 7 different shades of our sealer. These are 4 of them: G1, 3, 5, and 7. 1 the lightest, 7 the darkest. You get the idea. The first thing you might notice is these are not natural shades of gray. They actually have hues to them. This one has a bluish hue, this one has a greenish hue. It might be hard to pick up over camera. This one has like a reddish purplish hue to it. There's a reason for that, which we'll get into later in the video. But to demonstrate that, I'm gonna shoot my color over this card. Every time I put a coat of color on my parts or my car, I'm gonna shoot a coat of color on this. Just like that. One of the largest benefits of using a sealer is how fast you can cover with your paint, because this sealer was designed to accept this paint, and the shade of the sealer was chosen based on how fast you would be able to achieve your coverage. Obviously, some colors cover faster over a darker ground coat, and other colors cover faster over a lighter ground coat. But not only that, our sealer was designed specifically to accept the paint that we're spraying, which means I can put it on wet as hell, like you just saw, and I don't have to worry about any issues at all, like you would if you were spraying solvent over a primed surface, because your primer was not designed with your base coat in mind. Whoever manufactures your primer doesn't know what paint you're going to be shooting over that primer. Now, aside from getting better coverage or faster coverage when you use a sealer, you're also going to get a higher level of adhesion, because the substrate was designed specifically for the paint that I'm spraying. Not only that, you're gonna get increased durability, because sealer is more like rubber than your primer is. So when you're driving down the road and you're tailgating an 18-wheeler and he's shooting up rocks everywhere at you, if your bumper was sealed, those rocks are far less likely to chip your bumper compared to a bumper that doesn't have any ground coat. Because I know you guys that are saying, "Oh, sealer's a waste, sealer's a waste." You're not priming your bumpers. And even if you were, it's still not going to be as durable as a bumper that's been sealed. What makes sealer more durable than primer or painting over a non-sealed surface is that rubbery cure that sealer has absorbs impact. So if you took a rock and you threw it at something hard that has no way to absorb the impact at all, what's gonna happen? It's gonna damage whatever it hits. But when you throw something at a surface that is gonna be able to absorb some of that impact, what's gonna happen? You're gonna have less damage or potentially no damage. Now back to our spray out card and the topic of why we apply sealer where there is no primer. That's our second coat of color. Now, after our next coat of color, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this spray out card, we're gonna hold it up to a panel with our spotlight, and we're gonna see, based on the different sealer shades underneath this color, how that impacts the color and how that impacts our match. Now, as you can see on the parts behind me, after only one coat, we achieved about 90% coverage. Something you can only dream of when you're going over a prime surface, which potentially has as many as 3 different colors under your first coat of base. Aside from the obvious benefit being speed and increased production, if you're able to achieve coverage with less coats, that means having a lower film build, which is gonna drastically decrease the chances of running into issues after you paint this car, such as solvent pop or dieback or anything that has to do with solvents trying to escape. Now, I'm doing this video on the fly, as I do with all my videos, so I forgot to mention something. Although it's pretty obvious, I'm gonna mention it anyway. The benefit of using a sealer on your new parts is increased production, because rather than applying primer, having to let the primer cure, which if you're using a good primer, is gonna take a while, then you're gonna have to sand that primer down, clean the panel up, and then you could apply your color. With sealer, I can get a new part at 12, and I'm throwing base on by 1. All right, now for our third and final coat on our spray out card, we're gonna do our drop coat. And then right after this, once this flashes off, we're gonna take this card off, make sure it's nice and dry. We're gonna hold it up to our panel, and we're gonna check the match on each section which has a different sealer and see how that affects our color. Okay, our spray out card is all flashed off. Now, when I hold the light straight on, you don't see much of a difference. On the side here, I wrote the different G shades. G7 is our darkest. This color called for a G6, so it would be right in between these two. Now, where this impacts the color the most is on the flop. So if we come up here, if we look at the flop from the top down, we can clearly see from G7 to G5, let's just focus on those two, how much lighter that color gets. I definitely could have picked a better color to show this to you guys on, but at this angle, I think you get it. If you look at the G5, it looks much bluer on the flop, whereas the G7 looks much more, I would say, purple or violet or red on the flop. See how the face looks the same, but on the flop, totally different color. There you go. That's a great shot right there. See that? G5 looks blue, G7 looks violet. Now, if I showed that to you guys on a white or the right blue or the right red, the difference would be absolutely mind-blowing. I'm sure guys in the comments who spray PPG will 100% back me up on that. So essentially, you have to put a sealer where you don't have primer. This way you get color consistency from one panel to the next when you're doing a blend, because if you don't, your color will not match. This is actually a benefit because it enables you to have more control over your color without having to mess with your color. So if your color is very close, but you're slightly off on the flop, let's say your flop is too light. Well, then what you could do is if you used a G3 sealer, you can use a G5 sealer. You don't have to mess with your color at all. Just put a darker sealer and it's gonna darken your flop. And on our blend panels, we can see how it makes for an absolutely perfectly smooth transition from our blend area to the rest of the panel. And on our hood, I mean, it is absolutely seamless. If we just had primer there, sometimes you'll have to deal with what's called haloing. I'm sure there's other words for it, but essentially it's where you see a line where the primer ends and your blend starts. So this helps eliminate that problem completely. I can't even tell you the last time I had that problem. Now I'm gonna clear all this up and then I'll show you guys how the job came out. And here's our finished product. You know, one thing that social media taught me, especially Facebook, is that people are much quicker to attack rather than ask questions when they don't understand something. And I mean, that's just sad. You know, if you don't understand something, don't automatically assume that you know more than the other person. Chances are it's actually more likely that they know something that you don't know. So, yeah, I figured I'd just throw that in there. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, if you got any value out of it, or if you were entertained, if you could, drop a like, comment, maybe even subscribe. Until the next time.